What is the connection between the Torah and the land of Israel? Well, wouldn't you know it? The very first commentary that's given to us by Rashi. Rashi is known as a 5-year-old's commentary. Now, what does it mean, a 5-year-old commentary? It means that even a true 5-year-old can appreciate the teachings of Rashi. And he brings it in a simplistic form, the teachings, in order that it could be elucidated even for that child. Now, the truth be said, I'm not certain I'm a 5-year-old yet. The one that Rashi's speaking about. But nonetheless, we're going to make an effort together to come to elucidate the very first teaching of Rashi on the very first verse of the Torah. We know the very first verse of the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. In the beginning of creation, God created heaven and earth. And the very first teaching, you have it in front of you. Rashi quotes from Rabbi Yitzchak, from a Medrash, said, surely the Torah should have begun from the words, Achodesh hazeh lachem, this month shall be for you, which is in the book of Shmois, the book of Exodus, just before the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt. This mitzvah was given of the new moon and sanctifying the new month. The first mitzvah to the Jewish people. Why does it begin with in the beginning? Is the question. With creation. The reason is conveyed by the verse. He, God, declared to his people, the Jewish people, the power of his works in order to give them the inheritance of the nations. From King David in Psalms. If the nations of the world will say to you, to the Jewish people, you are robbers. Listim atem is in the Hebrew. You are robbers. Why? For you seize the land of the 7 nations who inhabited Canaan. They will reply, who will reply? The Jewish people. The whole earth belongs to God. He created it and granted it to whoever he deemed fit in his eyes. It was his will that they should have it. Who should have it? The other nations. And by his will, he took it from them and gave it to us. So, before we go into depth to understand the details of the teachings over here, look at that. The very first teachings of Rashi ties the Torah with the land of Israel. Could you imagine? Rashi lived during the first Crusades. That's where he lived, in France. And here in a prophetic vision, he writes something that today is so crucially important for the Jewish people to understand. What is our connection to the land of Israel? What does it say here very clearly? God gave it to them and then took it from them and gave it to us. Why? Because the Torah says so. God, who is creator, and therefore the Torah starts with creation, is the one who decides what belongs to who. So for a time he gave it to other nations, the Canaanites, and then he granted to whoever who he deemed fit, and then ultimately gave it to us, the Jewish people. So look at that, right in the very beginning. The Torah is telling us of our inherent connection to the land, because God spoke and said that it belongs to us. So right there we have. You can close the books. The connection is made. But let's understand much more deeply in the words of Rashi, the prophetic words of Rashi, and how exacting his words are. So he quotes again from Rabbi Yitzchak. Let's go into it. And if you want to write notes, feel free to. Surely the Torah should have begun from the words, this month shall be for you, meaning the first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people as a collective whole. Why does it begin in the beginning? So Nachmanides, or the Ramban, he has an issue here with what Rashi says. What do you mean, start with the first mitzvah all the way later on in the book of Exodus? There's mitzvahs that are in the book of Genesis, V'kru, be fruitful and multiply. The mitzvah of gidanasha, of not taking the sciatic nerve, that you can't eat that of an animal. Story of Jacob when he fought with the angel. That mitzvah is told. So, we miss out on those mitzvahs. Furthermore, a whole book of Genesis. What's the book all about? Our forefathers. And many stories about their journey. So we should exclude all of that. To start with the first mitzvah of declaring the new month? How does that make sense? How many questions is that so far? 2. Let's go further. So the reason he conveyed, so it says that nations of the world will say to the Jewish people, you are robbers. Listim atem. So here the Rebbe also takes issue. What do you mean we're robbers? If you look back in history, who was granted the land first? Anybody know? From the sons of Noah, Shem was granted the land of Israel. Who are the descendants of Shem? The Jewish people. Who took it over, so to speak, conquered it, or robbed it, is Canaan, who is the son of, not of Shem, no, of Ham, the third son. So if anything, who are the robbers? The Canaanites, not us. Third question. Now, in Jewish law, take that back, not in Jewish law, but in the way of the world, I remember giving Jewish history courses, and when you compare Jewish history to non-Jewish history, you know what non-Jewish history is all about? This king conquered this king, this nation conquered that nation and got that land, and it's all about conquering and everything, all of the drama is only secondary to what the ultimate goal is, building an empire. That's what non-Jewish history is about, as opposed to Jewish history. We have a Rashi, we have a Rambam, what they contributed in the teachings of the Torah. Why do I say that? It's because, is it indeed that one nation conquers another nation called robbers? We don't see that in the Torah. We don't see that concept. As a matter of fact, even nations that did conquer others, we don't see that they're held to a judgment in Jewish law, and therefore there's a judgment against them. We don't see that concept. So what are you coming and saying they were robbers? This is the way of the world. Shem had it first. Canaan conquered it from him. We conquered it from the... What are we listing? How are we robbers? In what manner? That's question number 4. Let's go further. So what's our reply? Let's be very exact. The whole earth belongs to God. He created it. So it sounds like the whole earth belongs to God because He created it, correct? So then it should be said the other way around. God created He created the world, and it belongs to Him. But it's inverted. So it sounds like He created it. It's got to do with He granted it to whoever He deemed fit in His eyes. So it seems to be connected with the next part of the statement. Is that clear? Okay? I'm sorry that so early in the morning that I'm making you use your heads. I should have warned everybody, have a strong coffee so you can be really focused. So then it says He created it and granted whoever deemed it fit in His eyes. it was his will that they should have it, and by his will he took it away from them and gave it to us. It seems to be repetitive. He just said it deemed whoever is fit in his eyes. It seems to be a general statement. And then specifically he goes and says it was his will, God's will, that they, the nations of the world, should have it. And by his will he took it from them and gave it to us. So why do we have as a general statement, he gave it to who he felt fit, and then specific statement, then he gave it to them and then gave it to us. So that's a fifth question. And the sixth question is, why is it important over here? Remember, this is our response to the nations of the world. Why is it important that God gave it to them? It's that he gave it to us, so it's important over here. Why make the statement that he gave it to them? Why is that an important statement to make?
They had a chance.
They're the nations of the world.
They had a chance.
Except Jude.
Well, okay, they had a chance. I mean, they blew it. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, questions are clear? I hope the answers will be even clearer. Yes, question?
Or we could wait till the end. I just had a very quick one. When you said the us, from them to us,
Nations of the world.
right, why are we not part of the them? Because we're a nation too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but we're the Jewish nation, right?
Right.
So we're not them.
Also the them, except
Or us.
Us.
Well, because we're not part of another nation. We're part of our nation, Jewish people, right? Remember, there is an us, them over here. They are calling us robbers. And that's what the world is saying about us today. We are robbers, right? Go home from where you came from, right? Helen Thomas said.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Poland. Go back to Russia. Go back from where you came from. Because we're robbers of the land. It belongs to the other nations. What are you doing there? When Ben Gurion was at the UN in 1947 by the panel, and they asked him, where are you from exactly? Poland. And where are your confreres from? Poland, Russia. And then he would ask the imams that were there, where are you from? Oh, Jerusalem. And oh, doesn't seem like this land belongs to you. This is what they're saying. The nations of the world are saying these words to us today. So we need an answer. Rashi had the foresight knowing what's going to happen today. And therefore, in prophetic vision, is giving us the answer. What are we answering? This is what we just learned. Now we're just going to be more precise in the words of Rashi, because we're going to learn a much deeper, profound idea in what Rashi is actually saying. Are we good? So, the first point that we need to know is that although there were mitzvahs given before the Torah was given, but when do we become a people? When do we become a unique nation? Is by the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, that's when we become a unique people. And just prior to that, when we're given the mitzvah, it's connected also of the first mitzvah of counting the months. Everything that was before that is sort of a prelude to us becoming a nation. It's a preparation for us to become who we are as a people through the Torah mitzvahs that were given at Mount Sinai. Is that clear? Okay? So, when Rashi makes a comment over here that you are robbers, you have seized the land of the nations, and what do we answer? The whole earth belongs to God. what does that statement mean? What does Rashi mean by that? So the simple understanding is, the world belongs to God. But deeper, what it means, the whole, kol, the word kol, the whole, meaning that that God, so to speak, owns not just the rights to give it over, but the inherent nature of earth itself. What do I mean? Someone gifted this to me. Can I gift it to someone else? Absolutely, correct? If I bought this cup of water, can someone buy it from me? Absolutely. Is this inherently mine? No. It just belongs to me in the moment. Right? Does any particular land inherently belong to any nation? No. They conquered it. It became theirs. I come from a place in Romania on the border of Russia that is really part of Russia times, part of Romania, part of Ukraine. Goes back and forth. Is any land inherently connected to any nation? No, not at all. They want to say the natives, it belongs to them here inherently. Proof is, it doesn't today. Oh, we feel guilty, so we want to do something about it, but inherently it doesn't. Why? Because the nature of land is buy and sell, real estate, right? It's a real estate, so you can buy and sell it, or conquer it, as one nation does against another nation. God comes and says to us, our answer to the nations of the world, kol haaretz, all of the land. In other words, not just the usage of the land, but the nature of land itself is the essence of the land belongs to God. And God has changed the nature of the land that it becomes now a holy land, a land that belongs integrally, inherently to the Jewish people. It can never belong to anybody else. Inherently. Inherently. They may take possession of it in the meantime, but inherently it belongs only to the Jewish people. That's the first statement that Rashi is saying here. Let's look at those words. The whole earth belongs to God. In other words, it's precision in the word. We don't think of the word that way. We think of the whole, all of the. No, it means the whole of earth. The nature of earth itself. Not just the functionality of a land, but the nature of this land is different. It inherently belongs to the Jewish people. From when? When we conquered it? No. That's the next step that Rashi is saying. God, He created it. From the moment He created that land, He granted it to who He deemed fit in His eyes. From the moment God created the world, it was our land. It didn't become a holy land because, we do a bunch of mitzvahs on the land. And because God gave us commandments to fulfill those mitzvahs once we enter the land. In the act of creation, it already was deemed fit for who He wanted, for a holy people in a holy land. So then that becomes the question on the other side. Well, if that's the case, then what are the other nations doing there? They have no inherent connection to it. It is something from the beginning of creation. God deemed it fit for us, and only us. So what's the Canaanites doing there? How did the Ottoman Empire have any dominion over it? How is that possible? How do we understand that? That doesn't seem to fit in with the narrative of what we're saying over here. It inherently belongs to us. So Rashi continues in his words, and it's not a redundancy now, the next words that he says. He says, it was his will that they should have it. In other words, yes, inherently it belongs to me and you and to every single Jew of the land of Israel, but God desired, which we'll get into, why would that be? Does that make sense? But so is the fact that God desired that for a time period that it should be in the hands of others. That it should be functionally controlled by others. We have Israel now for the last 71 years. But for 2,000 years, we've been praying towards the direction of Yerushalayim when we didn't have it. And even today we still do that, of course, because we're praying towards the Western Wall, which is the Holy of Holies that's there, and the Holy Beis Hamikdash that once stood and will, God willing, stand very soon in our days. So, why do we continuously do that? And because we have an inherent connection to the land that never stopped, even though the functionality of being on the land in control of our destiny wasn't there. Why? It was his will. That's what Rashi is saying. God's will. That it was his will that they should have it. But ultimately, and it's by the very same will that he gave it to the Canaanites that they could have it, even though they seemingly conquered it. But this is part of the plan that God devised, that he wanted it to be this way. And ultimately, he took it from them and gave it to us. That not only do we have an inherent connection to the land, from when? Creation. Not when we merely conquered the land, but from creation itself. And by conquering it, it is then the functionality of using that land to fulfill what God needs from us in that land can be realized as a result. Is that clear? Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
I totally agree that the land belonged to us. God gave it to us. Therefore, we conquer the land. We give it. And because of corruption, we lost it. Because Orthodox rabbis, the Orthodox Jews will say today, we don't have the right to that land because we have to wait for Mashiach to come for us to rehabilitate, to reconquer the land. So actually Israel should not belong to the Jews until Mashiach comes.
Okay, so excellent question. First of all, there's some that say that, right? We have to make a distinction between that the land of Israel belongs to us and the functionality of being on the land and controlling the land. There's a distinction there. So from the Rebbe's perspective, is once we are on the land and in control of the land, being that we have hostile neighbors that want to destroy us as a result of that, we need to protect every single Jewish soul, and therefore every single inch of land should not be given up to people who want to destroy us. But that's a different discussion. Very important point that we need to be aware is that indeed we need to be there in the land today in a very strong way, even though there are those who believe that only when Mashiach, because it does say in the Talmud, to be fair, it does say that in the Talmud, that we will not take control of the land until Mashiach comes. That was one of the oaths that the Jewish people took upon themselves when the Second Temple was destroyed. That being said, as important as that oath is to be fulfilled, the fact of 6 million Jews living upon the land today and the security and the well-being of those 6 million Jews is much more important than the oath that we made 2,000 years ago. So, therefore, we need to protect and have the complete security of the Jewish people, that not one Jew should be killed, and for that matter, the Rebbe speaks that if we're very strong, that even one Arab won't be killed as a result of that. Right? So, so that's as far as that is concerned. But let's go back. This is the fundamentals of the basis of our connection to the land and what our response to the nations of the world is. That what the nations of the world, when they say that we're robbers, you know why they're saying we're robbers? Because look what you did. You changed the inherent connection that human beings have to a land. Every other nation has no inherent connection to their land. They conquered it. So it became now under this flag. Tomorrow it could be different. When my wife and I went to Ottawa to the Museum of Civilization, War and Civilization. Yeah. So it was amazing. Canada, 300 years ago, I was blown away. Everybody, more or less, went to sleep at night, not knowing if they'll wake up in the morning, either captured by another tribe, slaughtered by another tribe, or that they conquered. The elders, overnight conquered another territory. Just 300 years ago here in Canada. Right? That's the nature of this world. Conquered or be conquered. That's what all of history is about, except for Jewish history. Now, the nations of the world are saying, you're robbers because you stole. And now you are saying that the land is inherently connected to you? There's nothing that's inherently connected to anybody. Not just land. Not a glass of water. Someone could just come and grab it from my hand and it's no longer mine. People can take land and it's no longer theirs. And yeah, you want to... So this is their claim. You're robbing away the fact that, yes, you conquered, but we could conquer it back and make it ours again. God says no. There's an inherent connection that we have. Why? Because God imbued into the nature of the land of Israel a divine holiness that is connected to the divine people of Israel. And that inherent connection will always be there. When did it happen? Not because we conquered. Because when God created the world, He created it that way. That's unique. Only about the land of Israel and no other land. That's ultimately what the non-Jews are saying. What, do you think you have an inherent... just because you were here once before, so therefore you think you have a connection to the land? Yes, we do. You know why? Not because Abraham walked on the land. And not because the prophets of Israel walked on the land. Not because we have a long history. A long history? Well, others have a long history. And the history ended. Sunrise on the nation. The Greeks, the Romans, the sun rose. They were at their glory. But the sun sets. And they no longer exist as that nation. Others conquered them. And that's the way of the world. And here we are changing that reality. Why? Because God is the creator of the world. And that's what he did at the beginning of creation. For a time he gave it to other nations. That's what he desired. We'll get to that in a moment. But we still had that inherent connection throughout all the ages that other nations controlled the land. What's the proof? We didn't stop praying towards Jerusalem. We didn't stop saying in the Amidah, which was instituted 2,000 years ago, the Amidah, that if in the silent prayer there are more references to the land of Israel and to Jerusalem than there is to our health. Health we speak about it once. Rifa'enu Hashem b'nei Rafei. One time we speak about health. By Yidden you say, Abi gesund, and everything else is okay, as long as I'm healthy. In our prayers we ask once. Baruch Aleinu for livelihood, for parnasa, one time. But Israel, I'm not going to go through all the Amidah right now, but Israel is mentioned no less than 8 times. Why? Because we have an inherent connection to the land. This is ultimately a holy land that God created at the beginning of creation that is unique from all other lands. Why? Because God set that into play in the beginning of creation. Not because of a historical connection to the land do we have a right to the land. And this is part of the problem politically that the Jewish people are having. We're not telling the real story to the nations of the world. The politicians are not, and Jews are not. They're not telling the real story. What are we saying? We lived there. Our ancestors lived there. Our prophets roamed on the land. It's true. But that makes us just like any other land. And it could be conquered. And therefore, what do you mean? So the Arabs could conquer us. They're trying. God willing, they'll never be successful because God will not allow them to be successful. But what we're playing into is that our land is like any other land. And therefore, yeah, we conquered it 71 years ago now. Okay, so it could be conquered back just like any other land. What, your prophets walked on the land? Ottoman Empire controlled the land for 400 years. What are we coming and taking it away? We have a right? Just because King David walked there and he had a temple and Solomon had a temple, that gives us a right? Why is that a right? It's only a right if you go back to the beginning of the story. It's a God-given right. Not a historical right, but a God-given right. Now, unfortunately, we live in a world today that the G word is like, hard to get it out of your mouth. God. Right? That's why we put a dash over there, and the G dash D. Because, it's hard to say it. It's hard to make a claim based on that. But folks, if that's not the claim, then we really don't have a proper claim to the land. Now, after we make that claim, then we could say, as a result, there's history that ensued. Part of that history is that first God gave it to other nations. And why then? We can ask the question, if there is an inherent connection that we have to the land, how could it be that God gave it to others? The Ottoman Empire for 400 years. The Canaanites for hundreds of years. It's our land. Even though we've always been in the land, there's always been a minyan on weekday minyan and a Shabbos minyan has always been on the land of Israel. That being said, we didn't control it. We were primarily outside of the land. So, the Rebbe gives a beautiful metaphor. That ultimately, we need to be a partner with God in creating the holiness. And holiness is inherent. but we have to conquer. There's a part in us. Furthermore, there is like finding the pearl in the dirt and the ground. You have to dig to find the pearls that are found in the dirt of the earth. God creates a world where there's a lot of dirt. Our job is to find the pearls in everything. That's why our mitzvahs are done in the physical. Why are they done in the physical? It's because the whole point is to sanctify the physical, to find the pearl, the gem that is in the physical nature of God's world. And in that way we partner with Him. If it would be that we would only have it by divine decree and no one else could have it, we wouldn't be able to partner and to ourselves to be engaged into bringing out the pearl, the gem of that's found in the dusty, dirty earth. And look at Israel today. A desert that for 400 years the Ottoman Empire couldn't do anything with it. You read stories about Jews who were, back in the day, living in the Holy Land, and the difficulties. They were so poor that the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad movement, would collect money to send to the people in Israel. People in Russia were not wealthy. They didn't have, but at least they could grow something in the earth. Israel was so a rocky terrain, you could not even grow anything, and people were literally destitute in the land. You know why? Because God wants to give it to the other nations, but that it should remain a dusty, rocky terrain. Only when the Jew will have it will the pearl come out. As we see literally today in the land of Israel, as we see whenever the Jews had control of the land, that we prospered, developed it, and it was a beautiful, beautiful land. So God creates this sort of process in order that we can have a partnership. Because the ultimate thing about Judaism is that God commands us, we're going to fulfill. We're like a servant serving a master. Or we're like a child serving a parent. Avinu Malkeinu. We refer to God. Avinu, our father. We're the child. And He's our father. And Malkeinu, He's our king. And we're here to serve. Both those things are absolutely true. But there's even a greater level, and that is called partnership. God creates a physical world from nothingness. From nothing, God creates a physical world. What is our duty? Take from a physical world and to transform it into something spiritual. Taking the pearl that is found deep within the earth and to find that beautiful spark of godliness. That's why, as mentioned before, mitzvahs are done in a physical act. People say, does it really matter what goes in my mouth? It's a physical thing. God cares. What comes out of my mouth should be spiritually good. Right? I should be nice to people, kind, considerate, loving. That's of the Spirit, what comes out of your mouth. Why is God particular about what goes in your mouth, that it's kosher? It's because that's the whole point. To find the pearl, the spark of godliness that's in the physical, in the dirt. So in the physical, where you think, well, does God care about that? Well, that's exactly the point. In that, which seems to be removed and meaningless, I want to be found there too. I want to connect to you. I want to have a relationship with you there too. And that's how we can partner with him. Because he creates a physical world that now we can elevate and find that pearl, that spark of godliness that's in the world, and to elevate it. Where does this power come from? That's the power of Torah. The teachings of the Torah give us that empowerment of that understanding, that then we can take a physical world and imbue it with divinity and holiness. Where is that divinity and holiness inherent to the land itself? There's only one place, called the Holy Land, Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael. The word Eretz Yisrael actually says it in itself. Eretz means land, Yisrael, Israel. You know the Jewish people are called Bnei Yaakov and Bnei Yisrael. Children of Jacob and the children of Israel. It's the same person. The father of the 12 tribes of Israel is Yaakov. Two names. What does Israel represent? Israel represents Li Rosh, my head. That's what the letters spell. My head. In other words, it represents that, like, the head of the person is the greatest thing about the individual, is our mind. So it represents in this the highest levels of connection to God, to the head, to the very. And where do we bring it to? Eretz, to the land. We connect the highest of the high of God to the lowest of the lowest, the land itself. Out of the four elements of creation, we have air, fire, water, and earth. The four basic elements of creation. Earth is the heaviest and the lowest of all of them. Right? And in the low, where it seems to be devoid of anything spiritual, is exactly where we partner and to bring from Israel, Li Rosh, from the head of God, from the transcendence of God, to bring it down into land, into the earth itself. And this is the uniqueness of the Jewish people. The uniqueness of the Jewish people is that we bring that relationship and connection, and hence a partnership with God, into the very earthiness of our reality and the very physical of our lives. And therefore, all of the physical things that we do need to be imbued with spirituality, with a holiness. Israel is what gives us that power that we can do it, because of the inherent nature of that land, that gives us that from there it spreads to the rest of the world. From this we can understand why the Jewish people have been spread out throughout the entire universe before the coming of Mashiach. It is because the inherent holiness that is in Israel is not here in Montreal. It's not here outside of the Holy Land. However, we take that power that from the Holy Land that is inherent there, and what we do is try to transform where we are. It says that God did a kindness for the Jewish people, that He spread us throughout all the nations of the world. What's the kindness? Well, first of all, could you imagine 70 years ago if the Jewish people would have been in only one land? God forbid. God forbid. So on a simple level is God spread us out to make sure there will always be Jews. Because anti-Semitism for the last 2,000 years has been right. It's been right. That's on a simple level. On a deeper level, God spread us out because this notion of finding the pearl in the earth is whatever country we're in. We need to find the pearls, the divine sparks of holiness. It's not inherent to the land, but is nonetheless in the land that we occupy. That's why it's important that where we live, this I'll conclude. third Lubavitcher Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, was grandson of the Alter Rebbe, founder of Chabad, the author of the Tanya. So a chassid came to the Tzemach Tzedek and he said, I have a burning desire to go to Israel. Holy land. Right? For holy purposes. So he told him, Mach da Eretz Yisrael, make here the land of Israel. Where we are is by divine providence. God put us where we're meant to be, because where we are, we need to find the pearls in our world around us. We need to find the divine connection to be able to use the material world and to uplift it in our divine connection to God. Wherever we are is ultimately making Israel. How do we have the power? Because the inherent holiness that's in Israel, and because that inherent holiness is because God so declared by the creation of the world that there is an inherent holiness in Israel, and the power through the study of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs and the physical acts that we do, whether it's putting on tefillin, giving a physical coin to tzedakah, lighting a Shabbos candle, all of these physical acts is bringing out that pearl, that gem, wherever we are. So this is the notion that we need to tell the nations of the world, we're here to stay. It's ours, because God so declared. And as a result, if we said this truth, there's no doubt that the nations of the world would hear that clarion call of that truth. We need, in the times of exile, you know what's happened in 2,000 years? We've become hunchback. We become bent over because what we've gone through. Right? It's understandable. Any other people would not be here today. The fact that we're here is a miracle, but that we're here kind of hunchback and we're kind of like, sorry that we're taking up space, and there's this sense of, who, me special? Chosen people? Chosen land? Must be somebody else. We're hunchback. If we will stand up straight with this message, the world will hear it, and that will bring the advent of Mashiach now. Thank you very much.